Good afternoon and welcome to a very special interview show of the Pro. Today it's my pleasure to have Karnal Singh sir on our show. Karnal sir has served as the Director of Enforcement Directorate of India and in the Delhi Police Special Cell, he spearheaded the 2008 Delhi blast cases which led to the Batla House encounter. Thank you very much sir for agreeing to this interview and welcome to the Pro.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Before beginning, I have a very special news to share with the viewers of the Broad and to the listeners of Prithviraj Chandelier podcast. So recently, Karnal Singh sir has come up with his new book named Batla House, an encounter that shook the nation. This book is the most authentic account of what exactly happened at Batla House. Check out the link in the description box below to order your copies. So, sir, what made you write a book on this sensitive topic? And since you have dedicated this book to the late Sub Inspector Mohan Chand Sharma, how do you define his role in this whole encounter case?
See, first thing is I wanted to bring out the excellent investigation done by the officers of the special cell in this case. The secondly, I also wanted to bring out the difficulties faced by the officers handling terrorism, whether they are of the special cell or whether they are of anti-terrorist cell of any of the states or whether of NIA. They face acute problems. It is difficult to find evidences in a terrorist-related cases, and the officers have to work very hard. As far as Inspector Mohan Chand Sharma is concerned, he worked very hard. He was an excellent leader. At that time, his son was in the hospital. He was suffering from dengue, life and death. But still, he chose to lead the team to the hideouts of terrorists in L18 Batla House. See, he did excellent investigation. There were only two leads which had come. One was the three phones used by terrorists in Gujarat riots, and explosions. And second was on 18th, actually, we got that information that 13 people had traveled after the Gujarat blast on 26 July in Rajdhani train from Ahmedabad to Delhi. Now he worked methodically with these leads and was able to pinpoint the possible hideout of the Indian Mujahideen terrorists, which led to the raid on that particular house.
So, what according to you are the major causes that made this encounter so controversial?
See, this encounter took place in September 2008, and there were assembly elections in 5 states in November and onwards. There was also parliamentary elections in early 2009. So a section of politicians tried to use this situation for their vote bank politics. They created rumors based on no evidences. And these rumors were picked up by the media also. And the fake news circulation caused it to be viewed as the controversial. But the facts were there, the evidences were there. And with these evidences and investigation, it proved that the encounter was genuine.
Okay, so like how big of a threat was Indian Mujahideen at that time for India's national security?
See, the Indian Mujahideen was not known till that time. The first time they came out was the email during the blast in November 2007. Till that time, it was unknown entity. Now, after the case was cracked, it was found since 2005. Varanasi blast, Gorakhpur blast, Hyderabad Lumbini Park blast, UP Court blast in November 2007, then Jaipur blast in May 2008, Ahmedabad blast again in July 2008. Doing blast after blast. The secondly, Indian Mujahideen people were the well-educated people. They had gone to colleges, some of them working in a very good organizations. they were able to radicalize anybody who was known very good. And it could have resulted in more number of people joining the Indian Mujahideen. Thirdly, it has a spread throughout the country, and they have tremendous radicalization capacity, and they're getting funds from the terrorist organization from the Pakistan, that is
Okay.
Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. They were getting support from them.
Yeah.
So this was a very lethal organization, which its end started from the Battle House encounter.
Yeah. Okay. So how difficult was it for you to handle the whole situation at that time? Like on one hand, there was an inquiry, and on the other, there were pressures from human rights activists and journalists, and so and so.
See, actually, I would say the false narrative from some of the activists were created in the media. And you know, the perception is very, very important.
Yeah.
People perceive whatever they are able to hear about.
Yeah.
And therefore, it was very demotivating for the team who had worked day and night to solve this case. This certainly can impact the morale of the field officers.
Yeah.
These officers do not think even for a second before putting their lives in danger for the safety of the society, safety of the nation. However, we countered these opinions by presenting facts and evidences to media and answering all their queries in a transparent manner. We had faith in our justice system that works on facts alone and not on opinions and perceptions.
Yeah.
Wadla House encounter went through several rounds of scrutiny from different agencies, and ultimately the truth was supported widely and won over the many detractors as well. It was investigated by the National Human Rights Commission, which found the encounter to be genuine. Then the report of NHRC was submitted before the Honorable High Court, Delhi. And then subsequently, the Supreme Court also found it to be genuine. And that put the things at rest.
So there is a very thin line between national security and human rights. So how challenging is it for the security forces and for the police to handle the cases that are so sensitive in nature?
There is no conflict between the human rights and the role of police, though it is a difficult role. On the one hand, the Constitution provides everybody the right to life and liberty.
Yeah.
However, there are restrictions to some extent provided under Section 100 of IPC. It is a case of self-defense.
Yeah.
If there is a threat to life to somebody, not even police officer, anybody, even a public man, he can take
Yeah.
recourse to use force, which can go even to the killing of the other person. There is another section in CRPC, that is 46 CRPC, which says if there is an accused who is involved in a case where the punishment could be the life imprisonment or death penalty, and he's trying to evade the arrest, then the force can be used against him also. Therefore, there is no conflict. The law provides the situations where the force can be used, and in the remaining situation, force cannot be used. If anybody goes beyond the legal powers provided to the person, then there is a legal remedies for that. There could be investigation against them. That even in this particular case, for example, the narration was made that Mohan Chand Sharma got bullet injuries, 3 bullet injuries from the back, fired by his own colleague. Very strange allegation that these people had been working for years together. They had done many operations together, making allegations on them. However, the post-mortem report was very clear that the bullet injuries were not from the back, but they were from the front, and they were 2 bullet injuries. The allegation said that it is only from few centimeters, but post-mortem report says it was more than 1 feet away. That indicates the version of the police officers was correct. Second allegation was made that the terrorists who died at the spot, they had not fired on the police. There is a test known as dermal nitrate test. What happens is when somebody fires, then the particles, gunpowder particles, get stick to the person's hands. So doctor in the conducting the post-mortem of the terrorist at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, they took the hand wash and sent it to the Central Forensic Science Laboratory, which confirmed that there was gunpowder on the hands of these people, confirming that they had fired. So there are proper investigation skills which can bring out whether it was used in the self-defense or it was not used in the self-defense.
So how do you see the role of media in the cases of encounter, be it Bartla House encounter or any other encounter for that matter?
Bring facts to the public. Police role is to bring facts before the judiciary. When the facts are brought before the judiciary gives opportunity to other side to explain, and taking views of both the sides, the judiciary decides whether something wrong has been done or it has not been done. Now, when media says something before the public, there is no other side to defend itself. So therefore, media has more responsibility towards the public. They need to verify facts before projecting it to the public. And that's why the concept of investigative journalist. But what is becoming recently is the rumors are picked up. They are not verified thoroughly. And if they are not verified thoroughly, the perception of people can be distorted. This is number one. Number two is the issue that how much information should be shared between the investigating agency and the media. Both have different roles, like some of the information may have to be used in the investigation, not to be shared, but the media would like to get even that information. So therefore, boundaries of both have to be defined. What is the boundary of the investigating agency and what is the boundary of the media? At the moment, there are no boundaries. That's one problem. The second is the training is required. Training for both the sides, the investigating agencies as well as the media, that what to present and what not to present, what to share, what not to share. And there could be internal guidelines for the media so that they should have their own watchdog. They have their watchdog, but that watchdog should be able to control if somebody is going beyond their defined guidelines.
Okay. So why is it so that an encounter is always criticized in India? Like, do you think that Indians are losing their faith in the police system?
See, it is a whole criminal justice system which has to be examined and analyzed.
Yeah.
See, justice delayed is justice denied, basically. We have our system because of pendency of large number of cases in the courts and because of shortage of the judges in the courts. These cases are pending. Results are not coming very fast. And whenever there is a delay, the criminals gets an opportunity to win over the witnesses by even threatening or by various means. And therefore, what happens ultimately is the conviction rates goes down. So the whole criminal justice system has to be re-examined, understood, and maybe upgraded. The secondly is, if you see the movies, they try to project all the encounters as if it's a fake encounter. So there's a perception becomes in the minds of the people that encounters are generally fake, which may not be true. So that becomes a problem. And then there are various inquiries which are being conducted. For example, one inquiry is conducted, that's the investigation is conducted by a team other than the team which entered into an encounter. For example, in this particular case of Bartla House, the encounter was with the special cell team. Therefore, the crime branch conducted an inquiry. After the investigation is conducted, they submit it to the court, and the court does the judicial scrutiny. Besides this, there is one SDM inquiry. Then NHRC also calls reports, and they have power to conduct their own inquiries. Besides, the people go to the high courts and supreme courts that a judicial inquiry is required. How many inquiries you are supposed to respond to? The team which is trying to pursue the terrorists or criminals, in this particular case terrorists, they gets bogged down in replying to so many forums. In my opinion, there should be only one forum that should conduct the inquiry, and anybody should be allowed to make comments only after the forum has conducted the inquiry. If the forum finds a lapse on the part of the investigating agency or police organization, take action against them, register a case and bring them to book before the judiciary. If it is found to be all right, then nobody should make comment on this. But because of this gap, who can conduct inquiries? So many inquiries are possible. The people go to the courts, people make noise on this. This will stop only if we have one all-encompassing inquiry on an encounter.
Okay. So at last, anything which you would like to add about your book?
In the book, I have explained about how, with the only very meager information which was received by the special cell officers, they were able to work it out, and what were the emotions generated when they lost their colleague with whom they had worked for a very long period. How, in spite of that, they worked subsequently. On the one hand, their dear one was in the hospital, dead. On the other hand, they have to work further also to catch more terrorists so that they should not operate. I have brought out all these things. Plus, I have also brought out what are the conflicting situations were faced and how officers were dealing with them. And then finally, I gave the whole description of Indian Mujahideen, how it came into offing. It actually started from the Tihar jail, where three persons, one a terrorist, one a person who wanted to be terrorist, and one a criminal, they joined together and formed Indian Mujahideen.
So thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
And friends, do check out the link in the description box below if you wish to order the copies of Bartla House. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.